we're going to be doing an introduction to Process Builder. So this is going to be one of the applications that comes with your BarTender suite when you have an automation or higher license. We're going to have an introduction to Process Builder itself. So for those of us that have never seen it before, or never worked with it before, we'll go ahead and just give you a high level, if you will, introduction on that. And there's some specific terms that are going to be tossed around, and one of them is actions. If you're keeping up with the series, that might be a little bit of review for you, but it is extremely relevant to this topic because it's so closely related to Process Builder as well as other applications. Then once we get the theoreticals out of the way at high level explanation, we'll dig a little bit deeper into how Process Builder actually works. And then we're going to do a couple demos. The first one's going to be printing multiple labels, and we're going to share data across those multiple labels. That's going to be a pretty simple example. And then a little bit more complex, it's going to be the select case demo. If you're not sure what that is, it's okay. We're going to explain it and we're going to cover it. And we'll see how that works as well. For each one of the demos, we're going to see the finished product first. So what the print operator essentially would see. Then we're going to go into the background and see how everything was kind of set up. As always, one thing to keep in mind, this is really relevant for anything really actions related, process builder related, forms related. This is just a couple cherry picked demos that we came up with. It's going to vary by scenario, by environment, by your capabilities as far as, your imagination. No programming knowledge needed, but, still your imagination, if you will. And these are just specific demos. You can kind of tailor them to fit whatever criteria you need. So we'll begin with Process Builder, just a little introduction. If you've never seen Process Builder before, what it is an application that allows you to create a set of packaged actions. And those actions can actually execute specific tasks for you in the series that you want, under the conditions that you want. And pretty much some of those examples, and we're going to go more in depth in a moment, is going to be, let's say that we want to print a few documents, we want to write back to a database. Once we print a document or something like that, we want to update a database or send a web service request to another system notifying that something has printed. If we're receiving data from a database, from a user prompt or anything like that, we want to use it across multiple labels. We want to send that data elsewhere, but we need to parse it first. We can go ahead and we can do that with Process Builder as well. And we can send automated emails. And really, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I think I've used that term before in the series, and as far as what options you have available to you. But that's kind of a high level thing. And we'll open the UI a little bit and we'll see how we go about creating these tasks and how to set them up to execute conditionally and all that stuff. So if you're keeping up with the series, we've done a form actions, or if you're familiar with BarTender Designer to this degree, you know that there's document actions in BarTender, there's form actions in BarTender, the designer. And you may think, okay, so why would I want to use Process Builder if I can just create a print action, just how I can create a print action here? The real reason is going to be this is going to be a tool that allows you to package everything together. And in an integration where we have a system that sends us a trigger, so a file gets sent over, a web service request gets sent over, a database is updated, and that triggers the integration. That's not always the case. Sometimes it has to be manually triggered. And that's when Process Builder would jump in. So you would create a process that may be complex, that may have a lot of conditional avenues and different ways and things that have to occur based on data and all that. And you can simply trigger this integration or this automated process by just double clicking the process file, whether it be on your desktop or in PrintStation or wherever you execute it from. So because you can package this, you end up being able to create a little bit of a front end, and you don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to understand any language or a specific language that you might not be comfortable with. All you have to do is understand what these actions are, how to conditionally print them, how to share data across them. And if you can do that, it's just click, drag, and dropping, typing things in. And it makes it much easier for you to create these solutions when there isn't a business system or an ERP system that we can integrate with that will call to us. So it's just another way to easily package and automate processes that you may have. And the way that we do that is by creating actions. So what ends up happening is you create a list of actions. So let's say you have 5 print document actions, and those actions will execute sequentially at the same time, conditionally, but you create those actions. And actions actually exist elsewhere in the software as well. They are semi-universal. So you might see actions in the integration platform. You might see actions in the BarTender document actions. In the form, you'll see actions with buttons and all that. And we also see actions in Process Builder. So now a given specific action is going to do the same thing more or less regardless of where you execute it from. So a print action is always going to print a document more or less. But what triggers it, under what circumstances, how you get to that point is going to vary. So getting there is going to be a little different. And you'll notice that we always have about 6, 7, 8 categories depending on where you create the action. And we always have about 60, 70, 80 actions available to us. Specifically in Process Builder, we have 70 categories with around 70 actions. Kind of take that point into consideration when you think, like how this demo today is really specific to the ideas that we kind of came up with, but it's really endless and there's really kind of countless applications for this. And it can be simple, like a simple double click just prints off a label without a potentially intimidating designer UI, or it could be more complex. So we'll see a simple one today, we'll see a little bit more moderate one today. Once again, some examples of that. So we can print, obviously, we can write back to a database based on different events or based on different condition, update a database or update an existing record, insert a new record. We can also do file actions, so read files, delete files, move files, web service actions, which we covered as well. And then really, that's just a few, and then you have another 60 or so that you can review. And I do encourage you, to go in there and just be familiar with what actions are available. You might not have an immediate use case for it, but just knowing it exists kind of in the back of your mind, and then when you come across a problem or scenario that might leverage that, it's good to know. So when you create an actual action, and we'll see this in the UI, but I still want to make a point to kind of bring it up just because this part is universal and it's just good knowledge to have. So when you create an action, each action is going to have its own properties. And based on the type of action that it is, you're going to see different tabs available to you. So for the print action, once again, just as an example, just because it's a common one, we're going to have the ability to select the BarTender document, the number of serial numbers, the copies, any properties as far as the record range, everything related to the print process. And you'll have options for all that. Whereas if you have a database action, let's say we're inserting a new record after each print job to a given table, we're not going to have any selection for a BarTender document or selection for copies. We're actually instead going to have the wizard come up. It's going to allow us to connect to a database. It's going to allow us to select what table we're going to update, and it's going to be specific to that particular type of action. The one tab that's going to be universal across any action that you create is going to be the action tab. So that's going to be where you set the name of the action. You can rename it. It doesn't have to be the standard out of the box print document. And that's also where you can set your conditions. So let's say that we want it to, based on a database field, we want this action to not execute under certain circumstances when certain data is identified or is not identified. And with that, so we have a print document action. Let's keep on going on that. And we have set a document to print. We have set a given number of copies to print. That's going to be static data though, so we don't always want to use that. And something that goes hand in hand with actions is going to be the ability to use variables throughout these actions. As you can imagine, I'm sure with most other applications, a variable is going to be a dynamic data string of some sort, or a data source of some sort, and it's going to be sourced from various locations, once again being dynamic. So we could have a field in our database that's called database printer or printer, whatever we want to call it, let's just say DB printer, and that field can then be plugged into the printer dialog or the printer field, and that printer is then going to be dynamic. So based on the data that we have coming in from our database for that field, we'll print to whatever printer as long as it's valid you have selected. Now, identifying variables throughout all these actions is going to be pretty simple. If you ever see the percents anywhere, but today specifically in Process Builder, in any dialog you see those percents. For example, like circled in blue there, the username is circled in percent, the current time, and the serial number SN. That's going to be a variable. So that means that it's been identified as dynamic, and whatever data, once again, is going to come in and get plugged in there. Variables as well are also semi-universal, so they exist anywhere that the actions can exist, pretty much, all the different platforms that we previously mentioned. So that's great. So we can create variables and we can have them be dynamic. Now, where does it come from? How do they exist? How do they come up? How did I pick that serial number variable, for example? So when you first create a variable, the insert variable dialog, as you can see here on the right, you're going to have a few different categories. So you're going to have the event, global, and system categories. And then based on which category you select on the right, under variable name, that's going to be the ones that you have available to you. So you'll double click any one of those variables and it'll automatically insert it for you. You could manually type them in, and you do have to in some cases. You could manually type them in if it's available, though, via this dialog. I usually just do that to avoid typos. But we have things like they can be sourced from named data sources. So we're talking about the BarTender document itself. It contains a named data source, and we can reference that. It can be from a database field. So whether that be a database connection that you establish here in Process Builder or a database connection that's been established on the BarTender document, you can go ahead and you can reference those field names as a data source. Then we have things that are part of the environment, so such as dates and times, folder names, and all that, so where the process is running from, and usernames and groups and things like that. That's going to be under the global category. We have system, a little bit more uncommon, but it's still there available to you. You're going to spend most of your time under the other categories. Then we have system, and that's going to be things like what operating system are you running, the version. I think it has some information on the updates and all that, and what domain this PC is part of, if it's applicable. And it can also be sourced from other actions. So that's going to be pretty particular in how it's handled to Process Builder. So for example, what I could do, and as we'll see in the demo, is I can have a BarTender document with named data sources, and then I can request Process Builder take those named data sources and save them to a variable, and then I can use that in other locations throughout. So how is that useful, or why should we care? If I have a document that I'm printing, and let's say it contains data that I want to share to another document, and I don't want a second data entry form to be, exactly the same as the first one, I can instead automatically have two print actions. One has a form, it gets filled in. That form passes the data to both BarTender documents, and both print. So we can have different size labels, printing simultaneously, sharing data. They can print right after each other, whatever the scenario calls for. And we actually are going to be covering the Action tab. So this is what I mentioned earlier. I already covered a little bit of this, but still good to review now that we got a visual on it. This Action tab is going to be still in the properties that we see in the right-hand screenshot here. So it's still going to be in the properties of a given action. And this is where you can rename something. So if you want to give it something more specific than print document, that's where you would set that. And I do that to keep things organized, but where I spend more time in here is under the run action. So if you don't want the standard behavior of just always or never running, this is where you can build your own expression or your own statement, if you will, that allows you to say, under all these circumstances, do or do not run this given action. And each action does have its own properties, so you can set its own condition for each one of those actions. Anything as far as error handling or how you want a fail to be handled is going to be set here as well, towards the bottom there. And that's going to be the Action tab. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of an explanation, high level at least, as far as what Process Builder is, what it does, how these tasks are performed. And now let's actually talk about a little bit more specifics. So Process Builder itself. So when you open Process Builder, what you're going to essentially be doing is you're going to be creating a process file. These process files are going to have that .btproc extension in Windows. And how you execute them, or when you're ready to run them, is going to be by simply single or double clicking, depending on where you do it from, that process file. And regardless of how simple or complex that particular process is, and all the built-in conditions and all that you have, it's going to run from there. Now you can just put this file on the desktop of your print operator. You can throw it into your print station directory, whichever you feel is more aesthetically pleasing or better suits the scenario, I guess. And it'll do the same thing. It'll just run that process for you. And in the background, actually, we're pretty much leveraging the integration platform. And this is just another integration of some variants that's triggered by that click. So that automated process is handled in a similar fashion in the background. So let's go ahead and take a little tour of the user interface. So we'll go through some screenshots and explain kind of everything you need to know as far as getting started with the UI before we jump into our first demo. So when you first open Process Builder, this is going to be the screen that you receive. So this is your welcome dashboard or your welcome screen. On the left where it says recent, if you have previously opened any other processes that you're maybe working on, that's where you can double click on it and open the process. Remember, there's a difference in editing a process, which is going to be like where you actually add the actions and all that, and actually running the process. And we'll see that difference here momentarily. So we have the recent, and on the right we have start and help. So under start we have just create a new process, open a previous process, and when you open a previous process it's going to allow you to edit it, like I was mentioning. Or for the BarTender veterans here, you may recall, so we used to have an application called Batchmaker. So if you do have any of those batch files out there and you want to continue using them in 2019 and forward, what you can do is you can bring that over and you can import that Batchmaker file, and you have all your functionality already built in. If it's already working, you don't have to touch it, obviously. But if you need to add one of the new functionalities, some of the new features or anything like that that's offered in Process Builder, you can add to your existing processes. And we have a lot more to offer in Process Builder, so you might be wanting to do that. So important to know that you can import those files, and then just your help, so Process Builder help and SQL on the web. So once we create a new process, let's just say I hit create or open, but let's pretend I hit open here. I create a new process. I'm going to jump to this window. Now, this is actually one of our demos that we're going to see later today. So right now we're on the Create tab. So you see the ribbon across the top. There's an arrow pointing at the Create tab, which has the clipboard actions and editing areas. So some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Some of them are not. So for the clipboard, that's going to be your basic clipboard functionality that you get in any application. So your copy, cut, paste. Your keyboard shortcuts still work as well. Under the actions category, so that's going to be everything as far as creating a new action, selecting one of the actions by clicking on the action drop down there, or selecting one of your action groups or creating one. So that's how you go about doing that. If you want to actually just create the action and bring up the insert action dialog, you click any one of the blue plus arrows in the process pane there. Going on, we have the editing area. So this is going to be for search and replace, and under find, that's going to be where you can search and replace your whole process file or your whole process and find a specific value or replace it. So if we have something simple, we're not going to really have to click around too much to find a given value. But if let's say that we're using a document name in 20 different locations throughout my process, and I have to remember all 20 and I have to click through and I have to hope that I don't miss something, that's going to be when the replace option or functionality comes into play. So we would just hit replace and just do a search and replace, then everything is updated and it's a little bit less hassle for you, less work, less worry. Then we have the insert variable. That's going to be the blue X with the parentheses there. So whenever, that's not always going to be highlighted, but whenever it is highlighted, that means that the dialog that you have selected, so let's say if I put my cursor over where it says document there, right in the middle where it says selector v3.btw, that's a valid location to insert a variable. So if I had any named data sources, if I had any database fields, if I had any of the environmental variables that I wanted to throw on there, like the current time or anything like that, I can go ahead and do so using that insert variable, and that'll bring up the insert variable dialog. If you don't see it there, or if you wanted to just manually edit, you just prefer that, you can also just type it in. Just remember, wrap it in the percents. Then we have insert symbol. So similar to like in BarTender where you're able to insert custom characters like trademark, registered symbol, and all that. You have options to insert symbols via that as well. Moving down, this area is gonna stay more or less the same regardless of the tab you have selected, but we're here, so let's go ahead and cover it now. So on the left, you have the process pane there. So under process, that's going to be where all the actions exist. So where it says actually actions here, that's, if you can see my cursor, that's going to be the default. So when you first open a fresh process or you're creating a fresh process, that's going to be what you first see. Then from there, everything that says select or form, which is selected in yellow and down, is things that I've added. So from there, you can make it as simple or as complex as you want based on your needs. And once again, the blue plus sign is how you create an action. And based on where you click it, it'll create the action under that particular section or area. Now on the right, we have the action properties. So that dialog that we just reviewed with the properties and all that, this is going to be where that exists. Now remember, and don't be concerned if it changes on your side or anything like that, depending on the action or option that you have selected on the left, the right-hand side or the properties is going to change. And you might have more or less tabs and they might look different. So based on the, whatever's selected on the left is what the options that will be reflected on the right. And then now we're just going to go through the rest of the tabs, and we're going to start with the test tab. So the test tab is going to be where you test your processes. So what you can do is you can just hit the start icon and that'll run the whole set of actions that you have configured. You can select a specific action and you can click on test action there towards the right, or where it says simulated print, you can use these in combination, of course, or where you see simulated print, that's actually like a toggle on, toggle off switch. You can enable a simulated print that will actually run the action but not physically print anything. So let's say we're on expensive stock and we don't want to waste anything. Let's say we don't have a stock available, or let's say we're not near the printer, so it doesn't matter anyways, we don't need a physical print. For whatever reason that you need to test your actions but not physically print anything, that's going to be where the simulated print comes into play. And then pretty much if you enable it and you run the process, it'll come up with a PDF or an image of a print if it's applicable to your process. If you're not doing anything printing wise, what should happen is you should just get where it says there are no messages in the middle. You should just get a feed of all the things that are successful, not successful, any error messages or anything like that. So moving on, we get to the Manage tab. So we have cloud storage and services. So if you're using cloud storage, like for anything as far as maybe you're storing your labels up there, maybe you're referencing as a file or a CSV or something like that, pulling data from a cloud storage location, and you want to manage it, this is where you would click it. I also previously mentioned that this is similar as far as in the background how everything runs to the integration platform. The integration platform runs on a set of services. Those set of services allow you to do everything that we're talking about today without the all automated, without the print operator knowing anything. So that's going to be where you manage those services, restart them if needed, etc. Pretty much what that does and what they both do is they open the administration console and they take you to different areas of the administration console. So if you don't like going at it this avenue, you could always open the administration console directly and go from there. So talking about opening other applications, we get to the Tools tab. So this one's pretty quick and easy. You click on the Tools tab and it exposes all the applications that you have installed, all the other BarTender applications specifically. And what you're allowed to do here is just click and open whatever application you select. So clicking on BarTender opens up the designer for us. So this is just the shortcut. Instead of going to the start menu or finding an icon or a shortcut somewhere else, you can just do it here since you're building your process anyways. So we have a good understanding, I hope, of what Process Builder is, the functionality, a little tour of the UI to get you started. So now let's start with our demo. We're back at our BarTender 2019 event, and what we're trying to do is the scenario has changed at this particular booth. We have multiple BarTender documents that we need to print. We have a main batch, and which is, the badge that we all get at all the events that I'm sure a lot of us have been at with our name and all that. And we have a secondary voucher, and that's printing on a different printer, different size. Perhaps it's color and the badge is not, but we have two jobs going to separate printers. And what we want to do is we want to give the print operator an easy way to just select what user or type in, it doesn't matter, either or will more or less behave the same. We want to allow that user to select data to print, but we don't want them to have to type it in twice, select it twice, or anything like that. And the reason for that is, well, for one, that just opens you up automatically to a huge window of user error. And for two, time, right? We want to do this as quickly as possible. So first, let's go ahead and review what the print operator will see. So we are connected to a database here, and we'll see, and I'll go ahead and start the demo or start the video. So we're going to run the process file off our desktop. That's going to open any user prompt, if enabled, any user prompt associated with that. I'm going to print a PDF, so I also brought up the PDF printer. I'm going to select my record that I'm pulling from the database. I'm going to confirm that the badge looks correct. I'm going to notify my print operator that there's going to be a second print, just in case they forgot. Maybe they're filling in, covering, etc. They're new. So we want to make sure that they're aware of that. And we see on the right-hand side that after a moment, we have two PDFs that print. Now, if this was actually printing physically, we wouldn't see this. We would actually get the physical prints. But for the purpose of this demo, I wanted to, just visually show that we went through that process and everything printed. So now out of the card printer, we get the event badge for, who's this, Jose? We get the event badge for Jose. And then Jose also gets a voucher for a free gift bag that we're giving out that's going to be redeemed elsewhere inside the event center or something. So if we continue on, we can open up these files and we should see all of Jose's information. So here we see his name. The barcode contains data that's specific to him. It should have his first and last name, his company name, and a unique attendee number assigned to him, and anything else that you may need for your scenario, right? So all that information was pulled from the database, and then it was passed to our second document, which goes to a second printer, and it's its own BTW altogether. So if we open up the other PDF, we'll see that this one's actually an 8.5 by 11, not a card printer. We still have Jose's information on there. And if we scroll down, we'll see that the actual voucher there is personalized or customized for this particular user. So that's the way that it'll work. And we see that it's pretty click, 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 and easy for the print operator. This is a simple process after all, but we just made it that much easier though by building the actual process. So now let's review how that was done. So we're working with the same files, and instead of printing here in this next clip, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the properties of all this. So we're going to begin in the BarTender document itself. So this is going to be the badge label here like we see on screen. So a couple things to note in this particular setup. Remember, this is not the only way to do this. There's more complicated ways to do the same thing. You might think of a simpler way to do the same thing. But this is how I went about doing this particular demo. So things to notice in this example in the way that I have it set up. I have my badge. I'm connected to a database. And this is a SQL database, I believe. So I'm connected to my SQL database, which has all my attendee information. And then I've created named data sources where that's where my cursor is, and it's highlighted right now on the left. And I've linked those named data sources to database fields. And this also contains all the forms. So form 1, form 2, form 3 down at the bottom. On my voucher, I also have named data sources, but important to note, I don't have a database connection here. And without the process itself, these files have no association to each other otherwise, right? I just have those named data sources. So this is kind of how we link them, if you will, once we get to Process Builder. So all I did here was instead of actually running the process, I right-click and hit Edit, and I have the two print actions that you can see here on the left-hand side. I renamed them to Print Badge and print voucher. And by default, what's going to happen is they're just going to execute from top to bottom. If there's no conditional statements or anything like that, it'll just go from start to end and execute every single one. Then under my properties, I have my document and where it's located and all that good stuff and its name. And I'm going to click on the name data source tab. Now, when we want to share data between actions, and that could be a print to print or a print to write to document or a print to update database, etc. Whenever we want to share data across documents, specifically when we want to share named data sources across documents and actions, we want to make sure that we actually have named data sources in that document to reference. And second, once we start building this process, we want to make sure that we check this box that says copy data source values to variables at the end of print job. And we can give it a prefix if we want. The prefix is optional, but we can give it a prefix if we want so we can easily identify it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to type in those named data sources as if they were just your standard variables, which we covered earlier. And let's go ahead, and you might have seen it at the beginning of the clip here, or towards the beginning of the clip. But let's go ahead and see once we actually get to the print voucher. So we're going through our document, and we're going to click on the name data source tab once again. We're still in the print badge here. We verified that we have the copy data source values to variables. Then we're going to go to the print voucher action. We have a different BarTender document. Remember, no association between these two. And then here's where the magic, if you will, happens. We clicked on the checkbox that we specify values for the named data source. We reference the named data sources on this voucher label. Then we link them under value to the named data sources in the print badge label. We set our prefix here, and because it's inside those percents, they now share the values. And as we see, every time we actually go to print that print badge document, those values are passed on and available to us downstream. So we could even create a third or fourth or fifth or however many actions that do whatever we'd like them to do and share that data across anything downstream from there. Assuming that we print after we run or after we print that initial action. And essentially that's how this particular demo was done. So hopefully that kind of gives you some ideas. Maybe you saw some use cases or some things that you may apply to your scenario. But for now, we can go ahead and we can continue on to our first question section. So Jasper?
The first one we have is, what edition does Process Builder actually require?
Automation or higher, if you want to leverage that. And then remember, in BarTender 2019, it'll let you know, it'll warn you of anything if you do go outside, and you can get some options to upgrade to the appropriate edition that you need.
Can you actually share a process builder with other users or computers on your network?
The answer technically is yes, but more defined or more detailed, it would be it depends. So if you notice, we're referencing things that might be local to me. So I might be referencing a database that only is on my computer. I might be referencing a directory that's only on my PC. So as long as everything is the same resource-wise relative to where you're running the process, you actually can share them out. And they're actually just XML-based documents too that look very similar to our integration XML.
Where can you actually save your process builder files? Can you actually save them like in Librarian?
Yes, it's just a file. Like I said, it's just an XML-based file, so you can really just save it wherever else you can save any other file. The easiest way to run it, or how you would probably set it up, is you're probably going to put it in a folder somewhere that's available to a print operator that they are familiar with. They'll go there and they'll run the process on your desktop. Or as I mentioned, another thing that could, really clean up your UI as well is using it in combination with PrintStation. So you create your process, you put it in your PrintStation directory, and it'll show up as one of the options there as if it were a BarTender document. The only thing is, of course, instead of printing a BarTender document, upon click, it'll run your process, whatever you programmed it to do. So now we have our select case demo, and I call it select case demo because of the action select case that we use. So the requirements are this. So we need to have a user interface of some sort where we're able to first select the layout. So is this a, there's different examples, of course, but is it like a box label, a item label, a shipping label, etc. So we need to select the layout. Then depending on the layout that we select, it's going to have a different form. So some things might be static. Maybe it's a branding thing where logos and addresses don't change very often, like our own personal, let's say, logo and address don't change very often. So maybe it's just static and we just need the copies. Other more complex labels may require you pull data from a database or you select a record from a database, etc. So because of that, we might have different forms come up, and we need to have the layout that we select reflect what form is exposed to us. Lastly, we might have other actions that we need executed in the background that's only semi-related to the print. So in this example, we need to write back to a database, and we don't need to write back to the same table for every single layout. Each layout is going to have its own table within a database that it writes to, and we need to make this as seamless and as easy to use as possible. We don't want print operators knowing all the backend stuff that's going on or anything complex, right? We want to make it quick. So let's go ahead once again, and we'll start with a demo, and this is going to be what the print operator sees when they come and run this process. I'm at my desktop, and I'm going to double click on my process file for this demo. I'm going to select the layout. Each layout is very different and has a different form associated with it. Based on that, this one is connected to a database. I have a record picker. I'm going to search for the record that I need, and I'm going to select it. Select the copies or the labels that I need. I'm going to get a preview. This is optional, obviously. I'm going to get a preview of my label. Then I'm going to get the option to confirm that it's correct. Then I get a notice, just so that we're sure of what we're about to print. We're about to print the baker's dozen label. We're back at our bakery. We're about to print the baker's dozen label, and we have this unique order number. In this case, it's B2231. So that's just a notification for the print operator. That looks great. Let's go ahead and we hit OK, and we continue on with the demo. And also, we printed the PDF here, for the sake of this demonstration. And we see that the product of this whole process is just a single label with the data coming in from our database that we selected. Of course, there's different avenues that we can take, as you saw. So there's decisions that the print operator made that affected the end result. So if they would have chose an individual label at the beginning, the data entry form would be different, the selection options would be different, and of course the printout would be different. So the layout would be different, it would go to a different printer, etc. So that seems pretty simple, and it's a very direct path to where they need to be, but there's various combinations or various paths that you can take to get to where you need to go. So this one, it's low to moderate complexity. Let's just say moderate. You can get pretty complex with this, but this is more of a moderate complexity compared to our other simple one. But we're going to go ahead and start on the same desktop. We're going to right click and hit edit with process builder instead of run or open. And this is going to be what our setup looks like. So what I've done here is I've made sure that I create that selector form. So that's going to be its own BarTender document, and that's also happens to be my header. So that's, I'm going to have my selector form, and that's going to be the BarTender document that contains the form, and in this case my header, as I mentioned. And it's more specifically, it's going to contain the named data source, which is linked to that first option. So the first option is going to be, what form do you want to print? Then based on that, and hopefully it's a little bit more visually self-explanatory once we get here, based on that, I created my select case action here. And these are all, by default, this is going to be empty on the right under cases. And this is going to be where I set all my conditions or all my criterias. So essentially what we're doing is, whenever you select individual, whenever you select half dozen, whenever you select baker's dozen, select that particular case. In this scenario here, or in the BarTender world, if you will, in this scenario, a case is going to be a way of grouping things. So I can just do a simple print, so it could just be a single action, or I can do a set of prints. If we expand one of these, continuing forward, we get to the case. This is where we set our equals value. So if we look on the right where it says case options, and we say equals. So we know that whenever it equals individual.btw, we want to go down this route or down this path and ignore the other paths for this particular job. Once we go down this path, the first thing that we're going to do is print the document. In this case, it would be the individual.btw. As part of that, anything associated with it, let's say this individual.btw has some forms, let's say it's connected to the database, maybe it has its own actions, is going to be run. Once that's done, we have this custom other option here, which is the insert database record. So each one of these different cases under our select case has its own document that's relevant to it. Here we're sharing data. We're pulling in the variables and we're writing it back to a database, so we have records. Each action has a different print, and these are the different layouts for the different types of labels. And we see once it's fully expanded, the little bit of complexity to it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just a print or an insert database record. That's just what we picked for this particular example. It can also be, send a web service request, or under certain criteria, send an email, whatever it is that we may need. So going on, we go into BarTender and we start with the selector form. So this is my header label, and it also contains my selector form. I have that name data source that you see selected right now. That's the BarTender document. I just gave it that name. That can be whatever you'd like it to be. My BarTender document selector. And then I gave the option to select from the radio buttons. And the radio buttons forces the print operator to select something that's valid. It doesn't give them the ability to type in a label that's not valid, for example. So that's going to be my selector form. There's no database connection here, as we can see. If we go into the form, that's the first form that we saw. And from there, based on what you select, it's going to select, in our example, we selected the baker's dozen. It's going to select the right BTW. So here in this particular BTW, we have our name data sources that we're passing values downstream for to write back to our database. And remember that this is just for this case. This is just for the baker's dozen case. I could have other labels that are not associated to this database that are associated to different databases, or just have a form or no form, or just automatically print, or maybe just send an email. So upon a certain criteria, we want to just send an email or something like that. So we see that we have a mix of named data sources. Then we go into our form. That's the form that we saw. This is where we selected the record and the labels. We have our preview form. And then if we go into the properties, remember I also mentioned any actions or anything like that associated with this BarTender document are going to be run as well. Remember we had that show message. So what I did here was I created an action under once it's getting ready to close, and it's to display that message that we saw. And we're using variables to pull in the specific case that we selected, the specific order number that's going to be printed. And then based on that, is what is shown and what prints out. So there's obviously some process to thinking through, first identifying the requirements and thinking through the best solution and making it as easy as possible for the print operator. But as we see for the print operator themselves, which is what we want in this case, it's very easy to use and it's much simpler. So less training, less areas for them to commit errors, etc. And with that, we'll go ahead and we'll move into our last question section. Jasper, do we have any more questions?
I got a few here. So let's say you have multiple process builder files that you have created. How would you run like multiple process files at the same time if you wanted to do that?
So it would depend on the scenario, but I guess you would have to assess the situation. My first thought would be to consolidate them into a single process and have the two parts conditionally execute. There is an action to run or execute the processes as well, so you can nest them. But my first thought would be to consolidate them and have a conditional scenario going on. Or if they're just unrelated, there's nothing wrong with having multiple processes, giving them their own name, and they do different things.
Going along with that is, can you actually import or combine multiple process files together, or how would you do that if you wanted to?
The easiest way would probably be to group them and then just do a copy and paste. As I mentioned, they are XML based, so you can edit them in a notepad or text editor. That's opening yourself up for mistakes, but in a pinch, you could do that. But what I would do is I would just open them up in the process builder side by side and just do a copy paste.
Why use Process Builder compared to like some of the other methods like document actions or the integration platform and so forth?
So for one, you're able to package all these actions, just by definition, you're able to package all these actions into something that's easy to present and show a print operator. Secondly, integrations are great and they have their place in all that. But the thing is, there's not always an ERP system, a business system, a warehouse management system, etc., to integrate with. There's not always a system that's going to be able to send us a trigger file or send us a web service request, whatever it may be. So in those scenarios where you want to have an automated process in this packaged solution, you'll use Process Builder to build that out. And you don't have to, like I mentioned, you don't have to be a programmer, and you can build something that's relatively complex.
Let's say you wanted to query it like a database.
Mm-hmm.
How would you pass like a query prompt value, like using one of the database actions and so forth?
So it sounds like they're familiar with BarTender, so they know how to connect to a database, they know how to create a query prompt and all that. What I would do is I would create a form containing a control for that query prompt. So BarTender document, a form, and then the query prompt. And then what you would do is you would create a simple print document action, and you would make sure that you check the box to show the data entry prompt. And what that's going to do is, regardless of what that form does, in this case it's a query, it's going to show you or expose that query prompt to the print operator, and they can type in, scan in the value like they would expect it to, and then you can continue on. If you want to share that value across multiple actions, just remember to use named data sources, so you would have to create one. Use named data sources, check that box that I focused on under the data source tab in the actions properties, and then you can use that named data source, which becomes a variable, anywhere downstream from there.
Can a single process builder file be run at the same time like by other users?
The quick answer is yes, it can. But there's some caveats on that because you see, we're using external resources. Be aware of the resources that you're using. If you're printing to the same printer and it goes, user 1 and user 2, and it goes 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, or something like that, things could get in between print jobs, obviously, not within a given print job, but in between print jobs, things could get mixed up. So you have to be aware of that. Other than that, you're fine to just keep on running them concurrently from different locations. Is BarTender 2019 available now? Yes, it was released earlier this month and it is available. So you can head over to siegelScientific.com if you're interested. And you'll see an updated website and the new additions and options. We now have a free version as well. And it'll give you some options to contact your sales rep if needed, if you're interested or need any additional help in that decision making as far as what addition you need. So with that, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.